Welcome to The Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity Event. I'm your host, AJ Ayers. Today, I am not joined by my fabulous co-host, Shane Mason, who is actually on his way from Mexico City to Tijuana to join me in San Diego. So I will get to see Shane later, but that is okay because I am joined by the fabulous Charlotte Geletka from Atlanta, Georgia, here to talk to us about money and children. Charlotte and I actually met. It was about 3 months ago in this very city of San Diego at a accounting conference, and we totally hit it off, and I've been trying to get her on the pod for all of Q1, but here we are in Q2. Charlotte, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. I remember chatting with you, I think, in line at like the shitty hotel buffet at lunch, and we kind of it's like, oh, what do you do? You're a financial planner, da 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 da. And you had said that you had we were both writing books, and that you had published a book. I was still writing, and that your book just came out. So tell our audience who you are, what you do, and tell me about your fabulous book that you just published.
Well, thank you for asking. Yes, we're fellow nerds. And so we met at a tax conference. I don't know how much nerdier it can get. So I am a CFP and I have a practice in Atlanta, Georgia. We serve busy professionals and retirees. And this book, Battery the Bulldog and the Funny Money Tree, was my book baby that I published with my 12-year-old son in March. This story is a really fun, whimsical story to help children learn about money from a very early age. So my side hustle, my pro bono side hustle is teaching financial literacy to all ages. And research shows that you've got to start talking about money at a very young age. So when my son was about 6, we started creating stories. He was already showing signs of being a spender. And so it happens to only people. And I blame my mom and Target. Those are the two culprits. So, But anyways, we talked about what happens when you don't save your money. And lo and behold, it became a really fun story. And it's available for purchase on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and Walmart and everywhere you can find it. And it's a great gift for children, baby gift, if you become a grandparent. And I actually have some friends that need to read this as well. So
yes. I was going to say, it's funny. First of all, I want to know how you got your 12-year-old to sit down and write a book with you, because when I was 12, what is that? 6th grade? 7th grade?
Yeah, 6th grade.
Yeah, 6th grade. I was a brat, and there's no way that I would have sat with my parents and wrote a book. So obviously you did something right early on related to money and related to motivation and related to liking your parents. So just tell us a little bit about for those new parents out there, those expecting parents, how do you start to weave these values of, the value of money, saving money, understanding how money works? I always tell this, I'm going to get to your question in a second, but I have a quick anecdote. My worst money misunderstanding as a child, I remember being in the grocery store with my mom. I was maybe 6 or 7, I think. And I remember her paying with cash. And I was like, Mom, why don't you write a check? That's the unlimited funds. Why are you spending your money? Why don't you just write a check? And I don't remember her answer. Honestly, I'm sure she explained it to me. But I just remember not understanding that that was still her money. So how do you start these conversations, and when? How early is too early?
That is a great question. Well, to be clear, we wrote this when he was about 6 and 7. Okay. And now
so would he still like you?
No, we did a story time at the farmer's market last weekend, and he told me that I'm a little cringy. So to be clear, his 12-year-old self is that it happened a long time ago. It takes a long time to publish a book, as you know. He is proud of it, but he doesn't he walks a distance behind me in his hooded sweatshirt so that, you know what I'm saying? Like when we go to book signings.
That makes more sense. That makes more sense.
He's
okay, great.
normal. Yeah. So, okay, I love that you shared your very first money memory, because everybody has a just quintessential money memory that's informed them, their relationship with money, their perception of it, and it comes really early. And I like to point to one of the very first universal experiences with money is the tooth fairy. And some children are losing teeth as early as 5, 4 or 5. I don't know. I'm not a pediatric dentist, but I do know that they're little when the teeth come out. Okay. And
we always have to have disclaimers on this show. We're not giving money advice and we're not dentists. Yes. But if you know any, I need one immediately.
Okay. I've had 2 children. I have 2 children. I don't remember when they lost their first tooth, but I would say your concept of money as a value of exchange for goods happens pretty early. So my younger son, when he was 3, spent a lot of time with my mother, and he in Target wanted everything. So he had a case of the gimmies, like give me this, give me this. My older child didn't operate the same way, but he was really interested in money in exchange of value. And your memory is quite young. So preschool is when we start talking to kids about money. They are starting to have an awareness. And the generation today, it's not the same experience as you. They're not seeing their parents write a check. They're not seeing it paid with cash. Although I do advocate that you should give your child cash at the grocery store, make them buy the Gatorade. And they have to count and they realize it's real money, because there is a disconnect between, Amazon credit cards. And that's in my generation, people got in trouble in college with credit cards. They didn't understand, you have to pay it back and there's interest and all that kind of stuff. And so as early as preschool, kids are understanding money. And another thing is that the adults around them are talking about it all the time and they're not realizing it and they're not pointing the conversation. Your kids are ready for it before you realize. And they're hearing messaging that costs money. We don't have enough money. Those people have money. It's talked about. So it's there. You want to direct the conversation, as so many things in our kids' life. So my overarching message is talk to your children about money early and often. Like, this is money. Also, this is going to be a tough one, but try not to give it a value. I ask every new client, I said, do you, and I have a roundabout way of getting to this question, but are you money abundance or money scarcity mentality? Because I can trace back people's financial situation to that one mindset, and they're getting it in, as they're getting as early children. And financial advisors, we each have our money story. I remember being in the 5th grade and wanting Guess jeans with a triangle on the back. And my parents said, absolutely no, we're not paying $50 for you to have that triangle on your butt. So I think financial advisors really can point to different stories, but early, often in preschool, start talking about money at a low level, like how much does Gatorade cost, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't think we realize as adults, the things that we say in front of our kids really matter. For me, it was my parents, fighting over money. And it wasn't necessarily we don't have enough. It was just more like we're fighting about it. The mortgage is too expensive, which ended up in divorce, which was, traumatic in its own way. But just thinking about this next generation, all of my friends who are in their, late 30s, early 40s, who are having young children, they're wanting to be different from their parents. They're wanting to educate their kids in a way. They want to have this closer relationship. They don't want to limit them. They don't want to, protect them, put them in the corner. And in some cases, I wanted to get to this later, but I think this is a great place to slot it in. It's like, how do you not raise spoiled brats? A lot of our clients are in this position where they've made it. They have a nice house. They can afford the nice private school. They go on fantastic vacations. They've built the lives that they wanted, and they want their kids to have everything, but they also want them to understand the value of hard work, and they don't want them to grow up with that gimme mentality, whether it's, Hot Wheels in Target or the, Cinque Terre vacation every spring. How do you give your kids everything because you've worked so hard to provide them with a fabulous life, but also at the same time make sure that they understand that, hey, not everybody has this, and mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, or a mom worked really hard to get this. And how do you do that?
it's tough.
Asking for
And
a
I
friend, by
think
the way.
asking for a friend. Okay. One, you have to have some awareness that you're a potential for doing it. So you're there, you realize you might do it.
Already
So
there. Already
you
won. Okay, great.
yeah, you have to think of the filter that you're putting your children through, because I raised my children in a way that I didn't grow up. And I also really enjoyed luxury vacations. And I was married to a super traveler. And so we got upgraded. We rode first class. And I knew I was in trouble when my 8-year-old son said, "Are we staying at a mid-level Marriott? Because I don't really feel like doing that today." And that's when I knew we had a problem. It's the mid-level Marriott
That's
conversation.
incredible. Mom, this is a 3.5 star. I'm used to really I only stay in 4 and up. What's going on? Are we okay? I love
So
that.
how am I
I
correcting
don't love
this? Yeah. So how am I correcting this? One,
How
I
do we
think
course
what happened
correct?
is
Yeah.
course correct. Your children need to know how much things cost, and so one is an awareness, because your children are seeing the tip of the iceberg, right? And my children are seeing 25 years of work. Their father went to med school at 20. He did not have his 20s. They didn't see that. They show up, when he's in his late 30s, and then they're born into the situation. So one is having a lot of conversations. Two, showing them that there are people that have less than them, and starting early with whether that be travel to a place and then go off the resort and see what's going on. My son and I have served in food banks. They see people waiting in line to get food, and that sparks questions. That was happening in late elementary, middle school. And then another thing is having honest, transparent conversations of, my son, is really interested in how much my housing is costing. And so being really honest and and then how much does that cost? How did you get there? How much do you make? And when he's 15, my older son is 15, is a sophomore in high school. I had no idea how much my parents made, how much the house cost, but also telling him hey, we made, $30,000 a year, and we lived in IKEA furniture and 2 mattresses on the floor. Being really transparent about what it takes to get where we are, showing other things, and also children that have additional. What I'm also noticing is that people like you and I are trying to hire resources for our time, right? So somebody comes in and cleans, someone comes in and does the laundry, and so backing off of that, because children are entering into adulthood with a capacity crisis. They cannot do real world things themselves. So, one thing that I'm doing and I'm advocating, and I've had a lot of, experts I've heard this from experts and other parents a little bit ahead of me, is the chore thing is not optional. At my home,
Yep.
you pull out the garbage, you empty the dishwasher, you clean. And the thing is, there is someone sometimes that can do these things, whether it be me or someone, in the home working, or nannies, stuff like that. But explaining that, you need to do these things for yourself. So that one, talking about money. And then they started to each get allowance. And then in middle school, they're paying for their own social activities. Okay. So children that, let's just say, you live in Brooklyn, right? So expensive. Well, I live in Atlanta, in a nice area, but after school, my middle schooler, the one that wrote the book with me, goes to this market. It's similar to Chelsea Market. And, he'll spend $30 on donuts with his friends, but he sees that that's, that was his money for, so giving them some type of tool. There's great resources out there. Greenlight, I'll talk about that. I'm not sponsored by them, but I've been using them personally. I really like it. I think that Capital One is getting in the game. Chase is getting in the game. There's a lot of providers that want these early, because, people are demanding it. Their kids have some type of credit card, but it's an allowance, right? So the allowance is going on there. And if my son's getting allowance or getting chores or doing babysitting or side work, you could pay him through this. And then whatever's on there is on there. It's like a debit. And so if he has $100 and he's spending $30 a week buying his friends donuts, he's running out of money. And so they have some early awareness. And then another thing I've started really saying is, this is my life, not yours. This is my money, not yours. And I think there was some famous celebrity, I think, that started that one. But the country club situation. I'm a member of a country club. I did not grow up in that world. I had a lot of hesitations about entering that world. And I tell them, like, this is my club and you're allowed to come here until you're 24 and then it's not yours. So if you want these things in life.
And if you want to join, I love that. Yep.
I played tennis with somebody recently and her son is early 20s. She said, oh, yeah. He chose between health insurance and joining the club, and he joined the club. So hope that fares well for him. But letting your kids have money failures too, So
I love
would
that.
say
At 25, at 25, you get your 25. It's like you get your health insurance. Yeah, but at least he'll be healthy because he's playing tennis at the club. So
that's right.
One thing you said that I found, exactly. One thing you said I found really interesting is educating your kids about how much your lifestyle costs and not just thinking. I feel like if we're, and I know that you're a financial educator at an early level. I do a lot of financial education for people in their 30s and 40s, and I hate to say it, but it's the same. We're talking about the same stuff. So if you don't learn it in 6th grade, you're going to have to learn it and kind of have this cold wake up in your 30s. But this idea of, a budget, how much does this cost? Should we spend $500 on groceries? I think that's so broken. And I loved the way that you said, hey, here's our income. Our income is $30,000. Our housing costs $15,000. Isn't that crazy? Already half of our income goes to this house. And, our house is maybe not as nice as your friend's house. So that means, they make more money than us. So starting those, associating money with the physical objects of the world, because it's such an abstract concept for adults and kids. And I loved your point because I didn't even think about this when we were kids. A lot of cash, right? Cash, checks, credit cards, what have you. But now these kids are Venmo, Greenlight, all these apps. There might be a world in 5 years where cash doesn't exist. So starting to equate, that value on the screen to actual money, that's just a whole new world for me.
Well, and I think too, it's, one thing with the kids that I learned really quickly is they're going to pick it up from somewhere in a way that we didn't have access to. So these kids, as soon as they get a smartphone or a computer, they're looking it up. And you don't think they're going to learn to use Zillow? In 4th grade, they did this project called the $1 Million Project, which I love this was happening. And this was in public school in Atlanta, Georgia. They had $1 million. They had to buy a house, they had to buy a car, they had to do all these things. And then they realized that $1 million is not a lot of money. And they had to literally clip out a picture on Zillow. So then they learned Zillow. Then they start looking up all their friends' house, and then they get financial education on TikTok and they're getting these terrible, if you do this, they're getting stuff. So you've got to get in there. It's almost like talking about sex with your kids. If you don't do it, they're getting it from somewhere. And so you need to choose where it's coming from. And so having the honest narrative. Also, I think that we were socialized. I was, at least. I grew up in the South. It wasn't polite to talk about money. And so what happens is that happens in the home, where the home is where you should be talking about it. And of course you have to do the education, hey, every, different jobs have different things. And also a big theme that I'm really working on with my older son is kind of your net worth isn't your self-worth. So saying some people, because they get really interested in I need the job with the most money. How am I going to afford all this? Because now I've been really transparent. And I said, but money is just a resource, right? And you have to be happy at what you do. So you can still have a really good life if you coach soccer or whatever, and kind of talk about that. But it's the whole concept of, and also the conversation has to open, some people get money because someone that they love died, and some people's jobs, it's not always what you see on Instagram. And also the conversation of a lot of people are wearing their paychecks or driving their paychecks. And so that awareness is causing the spending. They're basically being socialized at a super young age by the consumer culture that it's a payment plan. It doesn't matter. Right. So I think there's going to be a whole generation that gets in trouble.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I've heard
It-
stories from friends and clients where it's like, hey, someone got access to the Amazon account and the kid ordered, a bunch of toys, like didn't understand. And it's like, how did this happen? It's like, oh, they were playing on the iPad and they were watching Bluey, and then all the Bluey toys showed up the next day. You mentioned
yeah.
inheritance. We talked a little
Mhm.
bit about, the active inheritance, meaning like, hey, we have a lot because mom and dad worked hard, but what about kids who are inheriting a lot of money, maybe from grandparents, or a parent dies early and tragically? Like, how are you talking to your ultra high net worth clients about inheritances, trust funds? Like, what does the research say? Like, how do we handle large sums of money coming to 18 or 25 year olds?
Well, I think you and I know that that's like putting gasoline on a fire. Could be, right?
Don't do
Um,
that. Yeah.
and so, I mean, I am seeing a lot of spendthrift clauses in estates where the children are not getting the money. Like my own will has, like, there's not, it's 25, 30, they're graduated amounts. So I'm seeing a lot of control from the grave embedded in the trust. And then I think also the education. I mean, the adage, like, what is it? Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. You got the generation that makes it, that builds it, and then that spends it, it's gone. So I think it starts with the first generation wanting to have that worked, earned it, made it, having the values conversation. And also, I think there's a huge push in larger wealth circles to be philanthropically inclined. And so I think younger kids are seeing more exposure to the responsibility that comes with great wealth. Sometimes is the responsibility of making the world a better place. And so hopefully that education, along with kind of the financial literacy education, I do have some clients who have handled it really well. And so I think in their situation, I did ask, and the parents just kind of talked about, like, this is here. They had financial literacy from the get-go. So it goes all the way back to the beginning of my conversation is no matter if you are fighting poverty or high net worth, the conversations about money need to be happening in the home, right? And values
Absolutely.
as well, like
Yep. I love
transparent
that.
conversation. Money no longer needs to be behind a curtain. It needs to be in the open.
Yep. I love that. So I want to switch gears and talk about how parents who are maybe not in a situation where there's tons and plentiful money, one of the biggest expenses, obviously, we've got childcare, we've got early education, but one of the biggest expenses parents face is paying for college, which, back in my day, depending on where you went, was somewhere between, I don't know, 100 grand for 4 years and maybe 400,000 at the top. But now in 2026, we're seeing, astronomical prices for these private universities. And, we talk about like the sticker price versus what it actually costs, but we're talking about $500,000, $1 million. And if you have more than one kid,
Mhm.
we're talking about, mid seven figures in some cases. So one of my favorite tools for saving for college is the 529 plan. I'm obsessed with them. I tell all of our clients to super fund them if you can, especially in New York, where we get this really nice little tax break each year. I have been personally funding a 529 plan for potential future unborn children for the past 5 years. And, that to me was the major contribution I made to their legacy and their future, because it's just going to sit there for 20 years now and compound. So do you love 529 plans as much as I do?
I do love 529 plans. I will say that I also have seen, just to be devil's advocate here, the back end of 529 plans is I
Please,
have a client
please.
right now going through the fact that her child didn't go to college and he became a successful entrepreneur, and they want the money out. And so she's frustrated, right? And here is the tough thing about college planning. You and I can run projections and it's daunting and terrifying. I tell every client the age of your child and give me a public university and a private university, and I'll show you on the financial plan how much it costs. They're always shocked. It's terrible. But I say, hey, back transparent. This is what it costs. You don't know what the cost is until you're on the doorstep. which is unlike any other expense. You know how much a house is going to cost, give or take. You can plan for it. You know how much retirement you're going to need, several $1,000,000. With college, you legitimately do not know until it's happening. So what I do is I love the 529s. I love the tax rate, and I love the expanded use of them. So I say in your situation, like you've been funding it, you have the child, and being through the educational system of today, myself, your child's educational needs. My older child has been in expensive prep school. That costs 40 grand a year. Now he's at Catholic school, and you can use a 529 through K through 12, which I love because that helps maybe offset something you didn't plan for. And then I love that you can change the beneficiaries. And I mean, who doesn't love tax-free benefit? I love anything that's tax-free. It's my favorite thing. It's your favorite thing. We could just go crazy on it. I mean, yes, I tell it's just our thing. But it's tricky because it is really limited in that use. And so if I have a client that super funding a 529 is really going to take away from their other goals, like retirement or things that are more important to them, then I say, hey, this is what it's going to cost. How much do you want to plan for? And I have some people that say, I'm not paying for my kids' college. I dealt with it myself. I have some people that say, I want to pay for half. I have some people that say, I want to pay for the cost of an in-state education and outside of that. So I think it really is because I'm making it on the individual level of what's important to you. Now, if there is an excess of cash, a 529 is a great place to put it. If you're a grandparent and you need to super fund it, great place to put it. But it needs to be a holistic conversation about how you feel about it. And we need to be open and honest what happens on the back end, because my least favorite financial account is a custodian account. I cannot stand them.
Yeah, because there's so many restrictions, right? And I mean, look, 529 plans, they have restrictions for good reason because the money grows tax-free. So, and like you said, as financial planners, we have fantastic software. I remember when I first pulled up Right Capital, which is what we use with our clients. And I was like, look, I would tell clients, like, where'd you go to school? Ooh, Skidmore College. I can tell you exactly how much Skidmore College is going to cost in 18 years, with the huge caveat that we have no idea how much Skidmore College is going to cost in 18 years. And I have this little neat Monte Carlo simulation that's going to say you can definitely afford it and it's going to cost, $65,000 a year. But I love the idea of having optionality for your kids. And I think the 529 for me, you mentioned grandparents, is such a fantastic unlock that if the parents aren't the ones funding it, if you've got aunts, uncles, grandparents who want to help, don't send toys, don't send gift cards, don't send crap. Put money in the 529 plan. It's a tax deduction for you in certain states. And, you can start to teach the kid. I mean, I hope at some point, if the kids show up, that we can do like, hey, here's how much money you have in your 529 plan when you're 10. Let's go revisit it when you're 15. And let's see how much it's grown just by it sitting in that account, just by compound interest and the machinations of the stock market. So that's my plan. We'll see if that plays out. All right, we are almost at the end of our episode. I want to do a quick fire round here with you because we don't often have the pleasure of guests, and usually it's just Shane and I yelling at each other. Okay, quick fire first question. Worst money advice you've seen a parent give a kid?
Don't worry about money. Don't think about money. Money's not important.
Okay. Best age to hand a teenager a credit card?
I think it needs to be one of the kid appropriate credit cards. And my kids get them the last year of elementary school. And I have found that to be great. And then in middle school, when they start to get independence and do social activities, like I said, Greenlight does one, banks are doing them. So it's not a full credit card. It is a credit card with guardrails.
Awesome. Meme stocks for kids, having kids who can have access to trading in the stock market via their parents' Robinhood accounts. Is this a good teaching tool or is it a gateway drug to a gambling addiction?
Both. It's both. And so I say, talk about it. Also, some of these apps that I'm talking about that give credit cards allow fractional share purchase, and the parent has to approve the stock purchase. Each of my kids have fractional shares and I'm approving it. And that works out as a teaching tool. And so the meme stocks, when the kids start to have social media, the stuff is going to start coming to them. And so, in moderation, if they want to do it, I'm like, that's fine. Do a little bit. Let's see what happens. But also, when they are used to seeing that limited amount of money, it can be really powerful for them to experience a loss early with. And then I would also say one other thing, going back to the generational wealth, like I want to leave you kind of with this. People talk a lot on social media about generational wealth. It's not generational wealth. It's generational knowledge, both on the high income and the low income. If you can equip your children with financial literacy, you are giving them the greatest generational wealth available.
I love that. And that is a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Liquidity Event, Charlotte Geletka. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you. And as you know, weird fans of this show can leave us a review on all of the apps, the Spotifys, the Apples. We always appreciate positive reviews. Give us 5 stars. And if you want to be a guest on the Liquidity Event, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much. And I will see you all next week.